Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Friday, and all of our guests today brought to you by our title sponsor. They've got that wood shop going on auction January 11th. Able Auctions, ableauctions.ca. Joining us now from Hockey Night in Canada and the 32 Thoughts podcast, Elliotte Friedman, who was at the Winter Classic in Seattle. Elliotte, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
I'm digging the hair, I tell you that. Looking good.
I got some gel, buddy. I got some gel for you, Elliotte.
I haven't got any hair for you.
Gel's overrated, Rick. It's overrated.
Would gel work for you? Like if I gave you some, would it work?
Yeah, it would work. Yeah.
Hey, Elliotte knows all about gel.
This isn't like super powered hair or anything like that, Rick. Like normal stuff works on it. I just choose not to use it.
Your call. Your call.
What's your gel of choice, Elliotte?
I actually use this stuff. It's called like paste. So that's what I prefer. Usually, I think some of it is left over from earlier this morning when I wore it before wearing a hat. So that's kind of what happened here.
All right. Okay, so before we get into the Canucks, just your takeaway from the Winter Classic in Seattle. What kind of a job did the NHL and the Kraken do?
Well, I thought it was really a great event. I had a lot of fun. I've been to, Don, I think I counted. I've been to 20 of these now, of the outdoor games that have happened. I think I went to like the first 12, but I've been to 20. And, sometimes you go and you're like, am I really going to enjoy this? And I just have to tell this person I am busy right now.
No problem.
But sometimes you go and you're like, this again? And what really happens is you get caught up in the enthusiasm of the crowd. People go and they have a great time. And you get there early and they're all lined up and they're excited and they're talking hockey. And it's the people who are there always have a fantastic time. And that happened again here. This was the one I have to say, this had the least of a jersey split as I've ever seen. You expect to see more Kraken fans there because it's in Seattle. But they really, really outnumbered the Vegas fans. I'd say it was about 90-10 percentage for Kraken jerseys. They had fun stuff there. Sir Mix-a-Lot was great. The fish throwing was great. The game wasn't very good. Vegas wasn't very good, and they haven't been very good lately. And I saw the TV numbers were a bit low. Mm-hmm. And, I think there's a couple of things there. Because it started at noon your time, it kind of walked into that first of the bowl games.
Yeah,
that Alabama-Michigan won. And so, unfortunately, the TV numbers weren't great, but I don't think that changes for me how I felt about the event. And I do think, in the States this year, the number one hockey broadcast this season was Crosby-Bedard in Bedard's first game. And I think you're going to see Connor Bedard and the Blackhawks start to be in some of these events. And I think they'll be there next year, and I think it'll likely be in Chicago.
Yeah, Blackhawks in the Winter Classic. We heard that earlier, I believe, from you. Hey, speaking of things we've heard from you,
or as I've been told, by the way, Don, when I come on here, if I ever refer to Connor Bedard, my buddies who live there say you're supposed to refer to him as future Canuck, Connor Bedard. So
yes.
There we go.
Yeah. Well, video evidence, he is a Canuck fan.
Yes.
Your conversation with Jeff Merrick, I know you've probably gone over this a million times, Elliotte, but people who haven't heard it, but the Leafs reportedly on the verge of extending William Nylander. Maybe you have an update on that. I'm not sure. Over $11 million a year. Can Elias Pettersson's people, Elias Pettersson of the Vancouver Canucks, can they look at that and say, that's about right for our guy?
Look, I know Rick has been dragging me this week, so I have to say this. Of course, everybody's a comparable, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't think the fact that Nylander is signing soon, and I do think it's getting it's really close. It's most of the issues have been knocked down. There's always one or two last things you have to get done. People are really careful because, until something's done, it's not done. But they have made enormous progress, and it is close. Like there is a deal to be made here. unless everything falls apart. But just like, let's just say, for example, let's just say he signs today or tomorrow. It doesn't mean it makes an enormous change in the Canucks and Pettersson. Does it become a comparable? Sure. Are people going to compare numbers? Sure. But the number one thing with the Canucks and Pettersson is, when is Pettersson ready to sit down and seriously talk? This does not, if people think that Pettersson is waiting to see what Nylander gets so he can make sure he gets more money, I don't think that has anything to do with it at all. The only thing affecting the contract status right now and the contract talks between the Canucks and Pettersson is, when is Pettersson ready? And while the number may be a comparison point, it is completely irrelevant to the reason that this hasn't happened to any specific length, because Pettersson has decided he's not yet ready to do it. And that doesn't change simply because Nylander signs.
Elliotte, we got a guy named Kuzmenko here. You talked about this morning on 32 Thoughts as well. Healthy scratch, fifth time. Where's this going to end up? Where do you see this going?
Well, I think the big problem here, Rick, is that, when they had those meetings in Dallas and a couple of times, they had a big meeting in Dallas right before Christmas.
Yep. And
everybody said, great meeting. Everybody understands how everybody feels here. Nobody expected we'd be in this spot 10 days later. And I think that's the problem. The problem is not that Tocchet's benched him. I think the problem is that they benched him. They met about it. Everybody said, we're all on the same page here. We know what has to be done. And still, it has not been done to the coach's satisfaction. So it's clear that Tocchet is, who's pressed the right buttons almost everywhere on this roster, is not happy with what he's getting here. And it's always a concern. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been told, if you have a meeting and you realize it doesn't work that quickly when you thought it did, you've got a real problem. So now I think it becomes, what do the Canucks and the player want to do about this? And do the Canucks feel this can't work, or do the Canucks feel we have to move on? And also, what does the player feel too? Does the player say, I'm just not going to make it work with this coach? So I'm sure all of these conversations are going on right now. As for a trade, everybody in the league can see what's going on here. They've been contacted by teams. It's not a secret. This isn't the nuclear codes or anything like that. The people know what the Canucks are thinking. People know what the Canucks want if they want to move Kuzmenko. To me, the only thing that's new about this is, I think that there were people who believed coming out of that meeting in Dallas that this was still going to work. Now the big question is, do people still think that this is going to work?
Isn't it going to be tough, though, Elliotte? $5.5 million he makes. The player with no confidence, that's not easy to move.
Here's what I say about this. Number one, you in Vancouver have proven you've got a team that is able to make things happen. So I would say in a lot of cases, yes, this is very hard to do anything with. But the one thing that the Rutherford Alvin regime has proven here is they can get things done. So I wouldn't assume that as much in. I've learned when it comes to the Canucks, don't assume that they can't do things. Because in a league where most teams say you can't do business, the Canucks have made it very clear they can do business. So that's number one. You have to be aware of that. Number two, I think it just all depends on what the Canucks want to do here. With Beauvillier, they found a team that was willing to take the entire salary, and they said, it doesn't really matter what the return is. We'll take a late round pick because we want to move the salary. So now this is harder because Kuzmenko's got another year, but this is a talented guy. Like, teams are going to look at this guy and say, there's a player here. Don't forget, when he was coming over from Russia, there were a lot of teams interested. It doesn't change in a year. It makes it harder. There's no question about that. It's going to be a challenge. However, I don't think the Canucks have proven that it's not impossible. It all depends on what they're willing to accept here to get a deal done.
And quickly, Elliot, before we let you go, we've gone on and on this year about Rick Tocchet being the front runner for the Adams Award. But lo and behold, Rick Bowness and the job he and Scott Arniel, who took over from for a short period of time, have done in Winnipeg, they're third overall. How do you explain their success, which is unexpected in most circles?
Well, I just think that they've been – I'm really impressed with them because they've done it with guys being out too, like Kyle Connor. I think there were a lot of people out there that thought that when Connor got hurt, they were going to do a nosedive. But they've been really committed. I remember at the beginning of the year, one of the things they said was, we're going to be better because we don't have anybody here who doesn't want to be here. And I think it's probably true on one sense. But I just think, look, they're playing hard. They're playing committed. And it just shows you at the end of the day the value of goaltending. And you guys have it. You have Demko. And look, like DeSmith has given you guys huge games this year. When you have guys who can stop the puck, and Hellebuck and Brossoit can stop the puck, you just believe you can always win games. And I think they're committed. They've, like if you watched them last night, they grinded out a game. And in this league, when you're playing 82 games like this, you got to grind out games. And that's what Winnipeg does.
Elliot, thanks for this. Appreciate it.
Have a great weekend, guys.
You bet.
Take
Talk
care.
to you. And Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy
Talk
New
to you
Year.
in a
New
couple
Year,
of weeks.
guys.